This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. There is plenty to discuss when it comes to the new Dragon Age, especially when it comes to stuff surrounding the game too. If you've been on social media this past week, you have seen discussions on how the sales and numbers are doing for Veilguard. Is this game a breakout hit, or is it something that had a very large initial player count and then now has a significant drop, or it turned out to be something else entirely? I found a lot of this interesting because you have some saying that this game is a big hit, usually seeing this from the big games media folks, along with of course the fans of this game too. And on the other side, with those that have issues with the game, they are also looking to the numbers in sales and shouting that the game is not doing well on that front either. And for many of them, it's a combo factor of the game not being good, and then the sales are sort of reflecting that quality there. For me, I want to try and take a look at this stuff because this discussion is a good one, and maybe we can paint a clearer picture to see where the new Dragon Age stands when it comes to sales. So let's go to SteamDB as a means to give us some sort of numbers on how the game is doing. I don't know if there's a way to see how many people are actually playing this on Xbox and PS5, so know that while we only have a set of numbers here, this doesn't really represent the entire picture for us. Potentially it only shows us a third of what we could be looking at. So according to SteamDB, Veilguard peaked around 90,000 players. That means that within its launch, the game did not even crack 100,000 players. Just looking at this from face value, this would appear to be rather low. We are looking at Dragon Age, this long-running RPG series. This is a legacy IP from a game that has not received a sequel since 2014. So you would think that the market, and especially its audience, would be hungry for more Dragon Age stuff. Yet, just as sort of not passing the sniff test, this doesn't really look good for Veilguard. And as you can see from the chart as we go into the week, the player count seems to be going down, with peaks at around 65,000 and then 55,000, and then potentially going even lower than that. Now sure, you could make the argument that this is a single-player game. There is a definitive endpoint to the game. This isn't like a live service type of thing or multiplayer game. So at some point, yes, you would expect the player count to start to go down as people finish the game. I would argue that for something like this, or at least games of this genre, or even better bioware games of the past, they greatly encourage multiple playthroughs of the same title through their impactful choices that you could make. I would say that most players would probably just play through the game once, and then a larger subset of those players would then go through the game a second time, sort of see how it would be to be both good and evil, and then for the more hardcore, they would play it even more to explore even more of those interesting choices and see how the situation could be played out differently. Early BioWare had a lot of this replay value. I remember quests in Jade Empire having more than 2 solutions, and it would be fun to try out the different paths. It would appear too that the new Dragon Age is lacking in impactful choices and true player freedom that the prior games tried to provide and achieve for many players. And this could also explain the lower sales and then the drop-off. My point with this is a few things. For one, it is worrisome to see that the peak player count did not even break 100,000 on PC. We are seeing a considerable drop-off just days after the game came out. Now another thing I want to see for comparison is potentially looking at another game within the same space, so that we could get an idea of what it would look like to have a really big success, because I'm not a game sales analyst, so the peak player count here for Dragon Age could actually be good and I'm completely wrong. I still don't think that's true. But let's look at Baldur's Gate 3 and what the numbers showed. So as I understand it, the game was in early access for a while before the big full release. When the game had its proper launch last year, we were looking at a single-player RPG similar to Dragon Age, launching at almost 900,000 players on Steam. This title also launched on other platforms as well, so that number is definitely higher. Let's even make the numbers easy. Let's say that the player count on Steam is the same across Xbox and PS5, so that would mean that the game at its peak was near 3 million players. Now for fairness, let's do the same for Dragon Age. That would mean that we would have 300,000 players right here. Some might say that Baldur Baldur's Gate was a crazy success, only something that happened very specific to that game. But here we have a legacy IP that hadn't received a new game in a long time. I believe maybe even close to 2 decades. Players jumped for that game, and show that this is something that they have been craving for. And yet no one was making something like this. Baldur's Gate 3 shows people are hungry for more of this, which is more in line with the prior Dragon Age titles, especially Origins. But when Veilguard came out, it seems like people are not jumping for this. It would appear that a lot of legacy fans are not interested in this title, and maybe this Dragon Age game is not delivering on what it should have been according to its player base. You have Baldur's Gate 3, which was made by a much smaller studio, a crowd-funded game even, and then Dragon Age, made by bioware, a huge RPG company, and published by EA, another massive company. And yet it would seem, based on the information here, Veilguard is not doing so hot. Now you could make the argument maybe this is a success, because if the game can sell more than it costs, then we're gonna have some profit. Yes, that could be true, but it is rumored that this Dragon Age title had a developmental budget of over 200 million. And if that is not even including the marketing fees, then the player count just on PC doesn't seem to be enough to recoup those costs. Now we could flip this around, and I saw while we do not have the numbers for say the PS5 and Xbox players, maybe those numbers are much bigger. And that could be true, but considering that Origins was such a huge hit for PC players, and many would argue that it played better on PC. Dragon Age started its run with Origins on PC, and PC players have loved the first game. So you would think that those Steam numbers would also be high to reflect this as well. I wanted to break this down here because it was an interesting thing that I was seeing being discussed surrounding Dragon Age. We probably won't know for a month or more if this game is underperforming. For example, we already found out that Star Wars Outlaws did not meet its sales expectations. So if the same happens with Dragon Age, I think we will get that information, but we're probably going to need to wait for that as well. Maybe I end up being wrong here. Maybe Veilguard is a huge hit, and the rumored budget of the game is actually smaller than what it ended up being. But again, I go back to the simple thing. Does it pass the sniff test? With game budgets ballooning in recent years, and having really long developmental cycles, Veilguard kinda fits right in with all of that, and not having higher peak players, along with the player count now trending down. It could mean that this might be the last time we see Dragon Age, but while that is a topic for another video, that might not be such a bad thing if the poor quality of writing keeps up with the bioware games. What are your thoughts on Veilguard's sales? Am I way off base here? Is there other information you have seen that I have not mentioned in this video? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you can help to keep this channel going strong, and this allows me to be able to do more for my awesome audience. Please check out the links in the description and pinned comment for ways to support the channel. And most of all, thank you very much for watching.